And I think that's the biggest problem that we're seeing right now. All these people in Congress have, oh, we're going to pass this $100 million to go here. But out of that $100 million, 15 million of it actually ends up where they're saying it's going, and the rest of that money's going God knows where.
Well, that's the thing. Like Jared was talking about the investors. If you're investing money, you want to find out where your money's being spent. I think that's with any business, and our country's got to be run like a business. And that's why Trump is going to be successful, because he's a businessman. A lot of these other politicians have never held another job except for public service.
Wait, how many organizations would you invest into when their debt to income ratio is near 100%?
Zero.
And I'd be shorting that stock.
I'm a business owner, and we never miss a payment, but banks are still looking at our debt to income ratio and saying, "Ooh, you're a risk," because it's an expensive business. Yeah. Running the country is an expensive business, but you have to be audited. And like you said, Josh, like why can't the most liberal of liberal-minded people say to themselves, okay, if I'm only in my household making X, but I'm spending more than X, let's see where I can make some cuts. Where am I throwing money away? How come they can't agree? Okay, I don't like Trump, but you know what? We are trillions and trillions in debt. Let's see where we can make some cuts. I don't think we're ever going to balance our budget. No. I think that's not a reality, but we can make a dent. But we can make a really big, significant change in that.
Well, it's ran by hypocrites. Real quick, just because of your comment, if they truly care about the downtrodden and the homeless and the needy and the poor and the senior citizens,
they don't care about any of that.
If they truly care, if that was their cause, then they should be like, oh, you just found us $48 billion that was being wasted that we can now spend on these programs to help our citizens. That's not what they're saying. Or to build
factories, or to build apartments.
They're saying that this man shouldn't have access to this, and that the citizens shouldn't be able to read or see where their money's going. They're not fighting for the little guy.
No.
They're fighting for your rights. They have your information. They've always had your information.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to be tracked. I'm not having
You're
that
always
or
being
that.
tracked.
If you have one of these near you, they have you. So they're standing on a high horse saying that we're fighting for your privacy, we're fighting for your rights. Well, why didn't you do it for the last 40 years?
No one elected Elon Musk. No one said he was elected.
They elected the man that put him in the place to do the audit.
Yep.
You're more worried about what's going to be found out than helping the people you claim to help. If you wanted to help them, you would have done something in the last 20 years. 80 years. We can go, how far you want to go back?
Well, I'm just saying, like the oldest politician's been there 50 years, something like that. Who was that? McConnell, was he one of the? He's got to go.
Got to go.
Got to go.
And when they're going to start looking into Social Security next, good. Let's find out who all's borrowed from that. And I don't care what side of the aisle. If your name's on a list that you did something, got to go.
Yep.
Yeah, this has to be nonpartisan.
But this information really is, if they would look at it nonpartisan.
Right, but it has to be looked at like that. And then the other thing, too, is I really think that we have to make sure that we're taking national security into it when we're digging into this. Because
Trump was asked. Go ahead, sorry.
Just because, like, we can't sacrifice national security when there are two countries that are hated globally the most, and that's the United States and Israel.
Mm-hmm. But Trump was asked that what all have you given him the authority to look at, or what all have you directed him to look at? He goes, I want to look at everything. He can look at everything. He's going to look at the Department of Defense. Which is your military. He's going to look at everything to see where they can cut out trim the fat. And then they asked him. He said, "Listen, he's making the recommendation. He's not making the decision. They report to us, and if it goes along with that, if it aligns with what we want to do, we may take up the recommendation. If I don't feel the need or that we need to do that, then we won't take the recommendation." So they're acting like Elon's doing all of this. He hasn't fired anybody. He hasn't shut anybody down.
He didn't have the authority.
He doesn't have the authority, and both sides claim that he does, and that's not accurate.
Yeah, and then and being transparent about it, because as a shareholder, I want to know what these departments are spending money on. That we may need to look at re-electing, because we can't exactly take our money out of the to where we're no longer investing in the United States. I mean, we're taxed no matter what, but we have the ability to elect or to remove people from office based on we have the luxury of having a revolution every 2, 4, and 6 years.
Yes,
And that's
But
a
they
good
don't-
thing, but also a bad thing, because you get
It is.
someone like, we're totally on board with all these cuts. But if it only lasts for 4 years, they're going to go right back at
But
it.
but the thing is, though,
Yeah.
that's the luxury of our country.
I get it.
We
I know
we
what you're
have
saying.
we have that ability to where if we make all these cuts this year and in 4 years, well, actually not even 4 years, in 2 years, the vast majority of America hate it, then they go in and reelect
Senators and-
members
yeah.
to Congress to take it back to the way it was.
Common sense question. Ryan, you're a business owner. Jared, you're senior director, right? So you've got the ability to make purchases in the positions that you're in. Would you spend $10,000 on an annual subscription for a news source?
No.
Politico has been selling subscriptions to its so-called political pro servers for $10,000 a pop. NASA spent something like $500,000 in these subscriptions. So did the FDA. They spent nearly $520,000 on 37 subscriptions. That's your money going out the door.
That's how Area 51's funded.
It's insanity to me that under the guise of this subscription service, and the
had my
Politico
sound
thing's tied to
effects.
you said, where they're charging these exorbitant fees, and not any one of us, like I don't even want to pay $1 a week for the Wall Street Journal because I'm cheap. But realistically, man, why are we paying so much for access to something that is?
Why is the government getting involved and taxpayers going to fund a media company?
Well, there's certain
you talk
merit.
about corruption at its
Well,
highest level.
Well,
There's
there's a-
certain merit to paying for the services you're like as a government entity. I can see paying for if I've got 100 people in my organization, it's important to potentially be informed on what a news media is putting out. But for it to be $10,000 per freaking license or per subscription, that's absurd.
Once
Well,
to me, if once the media and the government start getting in bed with each other, that's awful.
I completely agree with you, but we still actually
It needs to be public that if a media source is funded by the government. So like the BBC,
Yeah, it does.
the BBC is, if I'm not mistaken, the BBC is funded by the British government. It's known that it's funded by the British government. So you as a British citizen know that the news feed that comes off of there could be tainted because it is funded by the British government. If a news organization is being touted as an independent news source and a reliable news source for independent information, and it's funded by the government and it's not known to the people that it's funded by the government, then that's a big deal. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I know the Wall Street Journal is a private company, probably gets some funding somewhere along the way by the federal government for some program. But it's, as far as I know, an independent news source. The Politico is one of the, when I was in politics, when I was doing political consulting, Politico was a major news platform that we looked at with trying to understand where certain races are going or where certain issues were going and the facts on it. But now, hearing this and finding out that was funded by taxpayer dollars, I think I said in our little chat, I said, "You mean I got to pay for my subscription twice? Once as a taxpayer and once as a private citizen subscribing to it." But if you're using that news source for as a source for information to sway a decision that you're making or consulting decision that you want to make, that really taints the factual piece of Politico, because it could be swayed, especially with the negative press that they give anybody on the Republican side of the aisle.
And the
Well, that's
leaking
the
of Supreme Court rulings.
Right.
Yep. Yeah.
If you're going
Because they were, I think that one article was they're even open to, they're allowed to be in briefings that maybe other news medias can't
Right,
be,
right.
which I think is a problem.